So, so you've gone from being someone who's, followed United everywhere, away games, Europe away, European Cup finals, to then like having to do a game like that where you just can't be a fan. You wouldn't be doing the job as a professional if you did. So
what's going on, guys? Welcome back to Real Reds Talk, an authentic football fan channel made in Manchester. Today's show is going to be different from the norm, and that's because we have a sports broadcaster with over a decade of experience closely covering the Premier League. He's interviewed some of the biggest names on the planet. He's the glue in the Fantastic Four that is Talk of the Devils, and he's decided to grace us today despite his busy schedule. So thank you very much for joining us, Ian. How are we, and are we excited for the start of the Premier League season?
Yeah, it's a pleasure, Nick and Sam. We've been trying to do this for, quite some time, haven't we, to be fair? But when the season's underway, especially at the business end, when we were trying to do this, it was just chaos and things were changing all the time. So new season, new optimism. United look okay, I would say. So, yeah, reasons to be optimistic, I think.
Yeah, we're getting there. We'll touch on the football shortly, but I've got a question that it's been bugging me since I started listening to you guys on Talk of the Devils. I've lived in Manchester for 36 years. I've never heard the phrase "yonner" since I started listening to your podcast, and now I hear it all the time with you and Andy. Can you explain to me what is a yonner? Why are you a yonner? Am I one as well?
Yeah. People from the hills, basically, is how Andy Mitten would describe it. So, like the areas of Greater Manchester, mainly north of the city, that still identify as being Mancunian, but aren't strictly M postcode. So where did you grow up?
We're Salford, Eccles, that kind of area.
Yeah, so no, it don't really apply to you guys, to be fair. Although, do you have a Manchester postcode in Salford?
Yeah, M30.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I grew up in an OL postcode in Oldham, so that's why Andy would say I'm not a real Mancunian, basically.
Yeah.
I should be going to Boundary Park every week and eating pies.
Yeah.
I kind of want to be a yonner at this point. I feel like I want to be part of the thing.
I just basically been ostracised by them. So that's fine. I don't mind. I mean, technically, Laurie's not bona fide either,
Stockport.
He's Stockport, so should support City, really, to be honest. But you only have to look at his haircut to know that he thinks differently to other people. So,
I think the City would probably have more fans if Laurie Whitwell was a fan of City. So he'd probably fill the stadium a bit easier. But
he can stay on our side, can't he?
Yeah, definitely.
I'm going to change gears slightly because, like I said before we went on, I want to ask a bit of a selfish question because, as a host myself personally, I'd love to know how you got to the point where you are now in your career, and what is it individually about kind of interviewing people and hosting that makes you kind of tick, and how am I doing so far?
Well, all good, yeah. Wow, big question. So I studied journalism at university. When I was at uni, we did all sorts of different. I mean, to be honest, I'm 37 now, so I would say entry points to the industry have changed hugely since when I started. I mean, I was starting at a point where journalism was just emerging from like the old school. You do local newspapers, you try to work your way up to national newspapers. You might then go into radio. Once you've done radio, you might do television. And obviously that had gone by the time I came to sort of trying to get into the business in like 2007 when I finished university. And now it's like changed hugely again. So, the idea of having your own stream, your own social media accounts and stuff like that, your own little brand that you can build yourself, like that just wasn't the thing when I started. So what I did was I did journalism at uni. When I was there, we did everything. We did written, both newspaper style, magazine style, online style. We did radio, we did television, we did everything that we could at that point. And basically I just got all my best grades doing the TV stuff. So from that, I was like, right, well, that's the area of the business that I want to go into. And then it was just about trying to build as many contacts as possible, get as much experience as I could. And I just got really lucky. So you might remember, or you might not, but there used to be a TV station called Channel M, which was linked to the Manchester Evening News. So basically, as I was looking for experience, they needed people because their budgets were getting slashed.
Mm.
So I started working for free. I was doing things like logging tapes and stuff like that. Then I've sort of progressed to being able to do the odd interview, commentaries, which was an absolute disaster. On things like, I'm trying to think what early games would have been. It was like Unibond first division North, I think back then, like Curzon Ashton against Bridlington, Mosley against.
You really done the groundwork, like quite.
Well, that was early on, yeah. So that's just how I started. I didn't get paid initially, and then I got paid, I think about 50 quid a day, maybe something like that. And then as Channel M was sort of winding down, there was just more and more opportunity. So I went from doing that to then hosting the football show, did like live presenting on their like flagship sort of evening show, all within a couple of years, just because everyone was being made redundant or they were leaving and not being replaced. So it's just like, yeah, I'll do it. And then next thing you know, I'd got to a point where I then started working for the Premier League. So when Channel M stopped, the Premier League's content service was being expanded, and then I jumped onto that, and I've been there ever since. I've been freelance the whole time, so it's still about building contacts even now. So yeah, sorry for the long answer, but that's a big question.
No, the longer the better. I'd like, yeah, absolutely, because I'm fascinated by that kind of stuff.
Basically, I'd get annoyed with Laurie, Carl, or Andy if they spoke for that long. So yeah.
But you have like, you're micromanaging 3 people there, aren't you? We've got 1 individual, so that's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. It does happen though. We did our season preview at the weekend, and we got other lads on the channel. Me and Nick do a lot of stuff, but we've got other lads who sort of come on and contribute stuff. And it was like it's like herding cats at times, trying to keep everybody on point and stuff like that. So yeah. It's fun.
Yeah, it's their responsibility. You have to tell them that they have to do it, rather than just expect you to be able to bring them back to point all the time. Yeah, which, sometimes people listen and sometimes they don't. That's part of the fun in it, really.
Yeah, that's some of our best contents come from that, where somebody's gone off on a tangent or a point, and it's been a great clip. So
yeah,
fine. That's what it is. But yeah, I want to go back to United a bit more specifically. Lots happened in the last year or so. We've got major transfers, Delict and Matsurawe, Yoro, that kind of stuff. Also, one of the worst seasons we've ever had in our history last season. But then we had a historic FA Cup win against City. As someone who's kind of neutral in broadcasting when you work for the Premier League and stuff like that, and then also you're like the helmsman of Barclay Devils as well, do you think we probably see things as you see things that we as fan channel who sort of react more emotionally or react more as like fans rather than that sort of journalistic point of view? Do you see stuff differently, and how do you see the sort of outlook of United going forward, like under Ineos? Do you think what sort of success is like quite reasonable to expect under them?
Well, for your first part of the question, yeah, I do think it is different because, well, you said I've been doing it over a decade, which felt ridiculous. I mean, this is my 15th season covering Premier League football now.
Wow.
Which I'm a bit like, am I that old already? But it turns out I am. So it is different. I mean, I remember very early on going to the derby at Old Trafford, working as a pitchside reporter, 2011 or 2012. And United got beat 6-1.
I remember that. Yeah.
And you're expected to go into the tunnel after the game and interview Manchester City players instantly off the pitch.
And not want to punch him in the face. Just be like...
Well, definitely that, by the way. But also to properly reflect the achievement that it was for them, And I struggled that day. I'd only been doing the pitchside stuff for probably about a year at that point for the Premier League. But I really struggled. I mean, I had mates still like pop up on Facebook every now and then, but I had mates like screenshotting, because where we used to stand was like in front of the away dugout. So I think Balotelli got subbed about 60 minutes maybe, and there's like me looking like Christmas has just been cancelled, absolutely like crestfallen. And I just found it really difficult. And I remember coming away from that game. I mean, understandably, before I've done this job, and even now, still a season ticket holder. I've been a season ticket holder since my dad used to take me on his shoulders. I don't remember what my first game was. He took me, from being really small. First time I had a season ticket properly was like the treble season ridiculously.
Wow.
But I'd gone anyway. I mean, the only reason I had to get a season ticket in the end was because I was too big for my dad to carry me through the turnstiles. I was about 10. So I got to the point where I could probably carry him through the turnstiles. So you've gone from being someone who's, followed United everywhere, away games, Europe away, European Cup finals, to then like having to do a game like that where you just can't be a fan. You wouldn't be doing the job as a professional if you did. So I vividly remember coming away from that game and just thinking, I can't go to the match as a fan again. In this job, I can't do it. So sort of professionally, you have to be able to withdraw yourself a little bit. Doing the pod, actually, for me, has been quite freeing. I've quite enjoyed the fact that I can be a fan again as a broadcaster, because obviously when you work elsewhere, you can't talk like that. You can't analyze it the same way. But I'd be lying if I said I was the same fan that I was when I started this job as I am now, because you just know too much and you've been through too many scenarios where City have done well and you know people at City. So you're actually pleased for the people there because they're people that you work with all the time, whereas in the past it would have been the worst thing in the world for City to do. I mean, don't get me wrong, 4 in a row is still sticking in the throat a little bit, but it does change the way that you watch football, and it does change the way that you feel as a fan, to be brutally honest. But I mean, a few years ago when United were 2-0 down at half-time at the Etihad and City were winning the league and the fireworks were ready and the T-shirts were printed and all this sort of stuff, and United came back and won 3-2 in the second half, I still ran my dad straight after I'd finished my shift and went for a beer. So it's still in there somewhere, yeah.
You got to keep something, haven't you? You got to keep something.
Oh yeah.
But just on the second part, what's the sort of success do you see like under Ineos?
Sorry,
no, that's all right. No, more detail the better. I love it. Yeah, the success under Ineos. How do you see that going? Because obviously people were a bit worried. There's a lot of people who were in favour of Qatar, a lot of other people who weren't. They've seemed to have done, in my opinion, they seem to have done quite well so far. Stadium looking like we're going to get a brand new one and renovation stuff. Carrington's get an upgrade. Signed some very good players. So far, so good for me. How do you see the success under Ineos?
I don't think there's any guarantee. That's the first thing I'll say. I mean, like you've just lined up there and spelt out, it feels like they're doing the right sort of things. I mean, the redundancies at the club has had a huge impact.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people from working closely with United for a long time who have been affected by the changes. And, I've seen a lot of stuff online where it's like, clear them out and all this. It's just that is just not the reality of from a human perspective. It's never nice to see people. Well, it's never nice to see people losing their jobs, but also that sort of approach makes out like these people are no good or they don't care, or some of them are lifelong United fans who've given their entire careers to try and make the club successful, and they've worked within certain parameters in the past, and the hope for them was that the parameters would be different. The first meeting that any of them had when Sir Jim Radcliffe addressed them was about a new era, was about freshness, was about change. The second meeting then was when the talk of redundancies and that sort of change came. So I don't know about that aspect. That in time, that decision, being taken. And when you look at the comparisons in staff, there's arguments to be made for why the changes were made, but obviously time will tell whether it's the right decision or not. In terms of the football sense, I think the transfer market has felt different. I mean, when they were looking to sign a centre-back and there's stories everywhere about Yoro, De Ligt and Branthwaite, I was like, oh, this is different. In the past, it's just been like, we're going after this one, he's the one, and we'll pay whatever it takes to get him. Now,
and it'll take 15 weeks to do it as well.
Well, yeah, or never get him if your name's Frankie de Jong. But, in terms of getting Yoro, all right, the money was more, but, he was going to Real Madrid and had his heart set on going to Real Madrid in one way or another, United. And it was definitely an Ineos signing that. It's not a Ten Hag one, that one. Ineos managed to one, convince the club and then convince him to come. So, I mean, there's signs of promise. The stadium definitely needed the attention. It's been talked about for a long time. for them to finally get the ball properly rolling with plans for the future is definitely a step forward. The training ground, again, did need some attention. I don't think it was quite as bad as what was being made out, to be honest, but it had fallen behind some of the big ones in the country. Even Leicester's training ground was absolute state of the art. They've got like a 9-hole golf course there. It's like Teletubby land at Leicester. It's amazing. So, even at that sort of level, if you're beginning to compete with Leicester for the quality of your facilities, then no disrespect to Leicester, being former Premier League champions and FA Cup winners and all the incredible stuff that they've done. But, you need to keep up with the Joneses a little bit. And, they've done bits to the stadium as well here and there. There'll be a new tunnel for United fans to get excited about on Friday night, which even little things like that, it just changes the feel, I think. And it's the type of thing that just wouldn't have been spent on in recent times. So, but like I go back to it, I don't think there's any guarantee. They'll do it a different way. They've brought in a lot of their own people, a lot of new people to the club. But I don't think it's a magic wand that automatically means that United are going to be back challenging for the Premier League title straight away. It's still going to be, to me, feels like a longer term project, really.
It's like Ralph Ragnick said, was it open heart surgery, the way he described it?
Yeah, at the time, that seemed wild, didn't it? Talking about changing the number of players and the changes behind the scenes, but I don't know what he exactly meant by that, but there's been a lot of change already in not a long space of time. So, time will tell, definitely.
I do feel there's a little bit more positivity around the club at the minute. I think the youngsters that we've got coming through, you look at Garnacho, you look at Højlund, Ahmad at the minute, even the ones like Amas in pre-season, there is a good feel about it. And the signings on top of that, the experience that you bring in, even with players like De Ligt, who's only 24, but has played for like Juventus, Bayern, and now Man United and Ajax. Is incredible. But I was curious to know, with those kind of players, the youngsters, I remember your interview, I don't know if it was December, with Garnacho and Højlund.
Yes.
Do you remember? I'm just curious to know, are you more nervous when you're interviewing United players, or are you more nervous when it's like, like a Mo Salah or something like that? Or do you even get nervous? More to the point.
Question. I'd say not really with players now, just because I've done it for such a long time. Okay. And the other factor, just a weird factor, but I'm older than a lot of them now. So when I first started as like a 23-year-old, you could interview people who were nearly twice your age. If it was some of the older players who were still around in the late 30s or early 40s. So, going to like interview like that era of United player, Scholes, Giggs, Neville, people like that, compared to now interviewing lads who are like half your age, is quite a transition. And in some ways, like the example you picked out, Garnacho and Højlund have never been interviewed in that scenario before, whereas I've done that loads of times. So if anything, they were probably more nervous than me, I would think, just because they're not used to it. And in that was very special that day, because it was a Boxing Day game where United had come back from 2-0 down to 3-2. Garnacho had shown, himself really what we hope he's going to be on a very consistent basis, a match winner. He grabbed that game by the scruff of the neck. It was a very, very mature performance from him. It was a standout display, really, in his time at United, still now, with probably Chelsea away last season too. And Højlund had just got his first Premier League goal. So to them, they were on cloud nine. It was the easiest job in the world for me. It was just like, just poke both of them. Yeah. They're in front of the Stretford end who are still singing the name the pitch. That was easy. But then, I don't know, Haaland, Salah, obviously huge names, aren't they? So they're interviews that you want to get right. There's definitely more onus on them because they are the players who they are. And, you might only get the opportunity a handful of times a season to do it. But then probably managers are probably trickier than players just because they've got more experience as well. Yeah. That night, that Aston Villa game, Unai Emery did not like my line of questioning at all. So you also have to roll with that a little bit. And the manager's far more likely to let you know when they don't like what you're asking than a player is too. So, but yeah, like I said before, I've done it for a long time now. So I wouldn't say I got like overly nervous. There's definitely an adrenaline rush when it's, like that game was a huge turnaround, you know, a late goal or something like that. And the big games, like doing title games or, you know, United, Liverpool or City, Arsenal in recent times, you know, there's definitely more on those interviews, I would say.
Just before I ask my next question, I just wanted to ask a bonus one because that sort of like triggered something in my head. Would you be nervous, like, if you went in and sort of like interviewed a legend from when you were growing up from United or something? Would that get the butterflies going? You know what I mean? Like that kind of thing?
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah. Carl did an interview, didn't he, recently with...
he did.
Cantona.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
And Adam Crafton did one because he's a United fan as well. He hides it well, but he did one for the Athletic as well last year, I think, or last season sometime, maybe the year before. So I was a bit jealous. I mean, for me, I had a Cantona wall as a kid, where no one else's poster was allowed to be put on the wall. Just Cantona.
Like a shrine almost to the king.
Yeah, not far off actually in some ways. But then the others, like I loved Andy Cole. He's someone I've got to do quite a bit of work with. Schmeichel as well. So people like that, when you've done it a few times, it's different. But yeah, someone like Cantona, yeah, I probably would get nervous for that. Yeah, definitely.
I imagine.
Don't tell him though.
No, we'll keep it between us. Obviously, you love your job. Me and Nick, very, very jealous of the sort of work you do with Talking to Devils, interviewing top players. Like, we'd love to get to that level with the channel. Like, I had 2 goals when we started this channel. One was to interview Laurie Whitwell, which we did. One was to get Jay Motti on, which we did. And then the other one was to get a player on, which we're still working on. So we will get, hopefully at some point we get that. But you touched on the sort of, you can't be the same fan as you were back in the day. Like, you have to sort of take that out of you. So I won't sort of like push on that. But when you were like back in the season ticket goals and stuff, what were some of your favorite memories as a fan? Like before you started like covering it as your job and your career, like what your brain goes back to that sort of match going fan. What memories sort of appear?
Difficult to pick out individual memories in a way, and I'd probably only really go over some of the big memories that we'd all have from years gone by. I mean, some of my earliest memories, I probably have a fondness for those even more than when I was older. I mean, for me, supporting football is about me and my dad, really. My dad took me to, like I said to you before, took me to matches when I was too young to remember going to the games. And even now, you know, the reason really I still have my season ticket, because I work so much, I don't get to use it that often. But the reason I keep it is so that when I do have the opportunity to go, I can still sit with my dad. So I'd say the best memories I've got watching football is with him, really. And that like won't even be like, you know, when Scholes scored against Barcelona or when Michael Owen got the winner in the derby in the 4-3, or watching Ronaldo or watching Kanchelskis or someone like that. I remember one of the earliest memories I've got, speaking of Kanchelskis, was beating City 5-0 at Old Trafford. And on the old concourse, before all the development was done in the North Stand, there used to be like steps down, concrete steps down to the concourse and a plastic bin at the bottom. And I remember vividly this guy, like a big ape, banging on this bin. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-0, and like everyone singing it all the way through. So that probably resonates a lot. I remember watching United get hammered by Barcelona as well. Really early on, Romario and Aristo Stoichkov up front. Now I sound like one of those old people who like mention players that young kids have never heard of, but you know, just an incredible team. And that was like one of my earliest memories of like going to a European night and stuff like that. So things like that probably stick in my mind more than anything. But fundamentally, it's just going to the match with my dad. That's my memory of football growing up, and that's still, you know, something I try to do as much as I can. Still go and watch the games with him.
Yeah, I think you can't beat the emotion of Old Trafford. Old Trafford has like, I think even Rashford mentioned it in one of his interviews. It has an aura about it. I can't explain it. Just when you're in there, that raw, like me and Sam was at the game when Ahmad scored in the last minute against Liverpool. It's just something. You look into your side, you're seeing 50-year-old mums that are just going absolutely feral and wild, and you're like, that's what it's all about, the emotion of the
grabbed
game.
by people and stuff.
I said this yesterday actually on the pod, but do you know what I love about Old Trafford? And I can hear it when I close my eyes, is the noise of the seats clacking when people stand up when United go on the attack. Yeah. Yeah. And that's why I love Alejandro Garnacho, because he reminds me so much of the type of players that United used to have. Just brave, almost fearless, whether it's the best defender in the league or the worst defender in the league. He'll get the ball, he'll want the ball, and he attacks, and he'll take the side from defending to attacking in a blink almost. He's not the quickest, actually. He's not as quick as people like Kanchelskis, who I mentioned before, or Giggs or Ronaldo when he used to do it. Even Di Maria, when he first arrived, he had his moments of having that quality for a couple of games. And then obviously it all went wrong. But that feeling of like craning your neck and jumping up because you can't see and it's obviously to do with the sort of dynamic of the stadium as well, and the flat seats and stuff, but that noise of the seats clacking, clack, 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 as everyone stands up to see United attack. That's unique to Old Trafford. That's special.
And sometimes after those games, of course, you guys do like really late night recordings for Talk of the Devils. I mean, like 11, 12 o'clock.
We get we're not lying. We actually genuinely get chucked out of the stadium. We are actually the last people there.
The stewards hate you. The stewards just be like, God's sake, can you just leave?
I mean, they're very polite.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So I'd love to, not just the story, like obviously you guys doing these late night shows and stuff, but how did that merge, you going into Talk of the Devils, and how did that situation work?
They needed a host. Carl had sort of, I think he'd hosted, I think I'm right in saying that he was like the designated host previously, but they wanted him to be part of the panel because that's his major strength, his analysis of United and some of the tactical players and players' strengths is his huge strength. And it's very difficult to be a host and bring that sort of insight. I mean, I occasionally will comment on the odd thing when I do the podcast, but a lot of the time, for me, it's more about the three of them. They're the ones who are doing, I mean, I am doing the job in a different way, but they're the ones who are very close to the club. Between the three of them, they know absolutely everything. Yeah. So from my perspective, it's just about directing traffic, really. You called me the glue earlier, which is, I like that. That's quite, if you see it like that, then that's, in my mind, what the host should be. It's bringing the best out of the other three, and it's making it flow and feel like a natural conversation when really it's anything but.
Yeah, I'd imagine it's hard, like you said, because journalists, they have so much knowledge and they want to get so much stuff out, and managing that within like 45 minutes, when, especially the last couple of episodes, I think you've had so much to cover.
Well, they've gone to an hour, haven't they, some of them? Just because we've not done it for a week, and United is ridiculous. It's relentless.
Tell me about it. Yeah.
It's absolutely, I mean, you guys will know, dude.
Every day it's like...
Every day there's something, And like the last, I don't know, well, since I've been doing the podcast, it's 3 years, I think now, something like that. The amount of stuff that's happened,
mental.
From Ronaldo coming back, Ineos's investment, I could be here all day. The manager changes, the ups, the downs, cup finals, other trips to Wembley, and then you're talking about all the different appointments that have been made. Ed Woodward leaving, John Murtagh leaving, like you just can't take your eyes off it for a minute, can you? It's great. It's fertile ground for us to all talk about it in a way. But be nice to be boring for a bit and just win football matches, and that'd be the story, wouldn't it?
I've said that so many times where it's like, can we just have a 2-0 win where we're comfortable, we're in control, nothing dramatic happens.
No controversy, no injuries.
And we just, that's it. And we can have a nice little 20-minute review. Yeah, like this, cool. And we just say, it's never happens. But
do you remember that, though, where United would win 2-0 or they'd win 3-1 if they conceded first? And that was just like, take the next one.
Done.
Yeah.
I mean, that feels like a lifetime ago in some ways now. They've had it in moments, haven't they, the last sort of decade? They've had seasons or they've had spells where it's felt like they were getting back to that, and then for one reason or another, it's just reverted to disappointment and chaos again. But yeah, I'm getting depressed now. So let's talk about something else.
I think the last spell where I was like truly, oh my God, United might be back here was the Ollie spell. He came in, he had that 14-game run where we just smashing everybody. We were just like
Shackles
running.
were off, weren't they?
And then Paris happened, which up until the City final and the Liverpool game, that was my favourite moment post Fergie. Was the Paris game, like insane, like United were back. But I think that Liverpool game might have just replaced it because I was in the stadium for it. So I think that might just sort of push it out. But I just wanted to talk on you as an interviewer and you as a host. Obviously, I think there's a sense of duality when you're an interviewer, when you're a host type thing. Nick probably knows this more than me, but I have done, when Nick's not been available, I've done my fair share of hosting, which I don't think I'm good at. I think I'm better as a sort of opiniated, cynical type of man. But
shouting from the sides.
Exactly. Yeah, that's me. You've got to have a sort of engaging presence or a personality, but you can't overawe the occasion as well. Like, can't sort of diminish your fellow panel sort of flames, if you will. How do you straddle that line, especially when you sort of interview top Premier League players, or which we want to do one day, and when you're on Talk of the Devils, how do you straddle that line of like, you want to make sure that people know your personality, they enjoy what you do, but you don't overawe the occasion, as it were?
It's difficult, and I don't think I always get it right even now, and that's with obviously doing the podcast, for example, for a few years. I think the most important thing to remember is you aren't the most important person, and your opinion, when I do it, in my opinion, isn't as important as the others. So I think it's playing a role sometimes as well, where you have to think about what gets the best out of the people that you're working with. When you're interviewing people, I always say that the 5 minutes before you press record is the most important part of the interview, because that's the time where you can set the tone. You can get a feel for what the person's like, what sort of mood they're in. There might be, you could try the odd line or the odd joke and see if it lands, and then use that in the interview. You're trying to build a rapport, but you're also trying to get a measure of like how far you can go with certain topics. Or, I'm trying to think of like good examples, but if you sit down with someone and they're in a really bad mood, then straight away, right, I'm gonna have to work harder today, and I'm gonna have to be careful the way I ask certain things and the way I approach certain topics. If you're doing the hosting, then it's a lot more about signposting. We're gonna start now. This is all the important information. Here's the people. Right, first question is about when we did the pod yesterday, the Community Shield. Carl's just got off the train, so I'll go there first. Yeah. But they were all there. So again, with that one, you could ask all three of them very similar questions, but I know that, a tactical question will probably land better with Carl. A news line would probably land better with Laurie. A heritage type question would land better with Andy. They can all do it, but if you're sort of directing the traffic certain ways, then it's about making sure that you are asking the right question to the right person in the right way. And I think not overthinking it as well. I think you can really get bogged. This is maybe comes with experience in a way, but just not like pouring over every single detail, because it is still a conversation. It is still supposed to be a couple of people, 3 people, 2 people, whatever it is, having a conversation about something that you're both very passionate about. So you can get bogged down in, how do I ask that question? How do I phrase it? But if you sit there and you're always looking at your notes and you're anxious about getting the words exactly right and stuff like that, it can then feel unnatural, and that can make people feel uncomfortable. And then maybe the responses you get are not perfect. I mean, there's different ways to do interviews. Other people would thrive on that discomfort and that anxiety and setting that sort of tone in the room, because they're after, a more political journalist or even a more political football journalist would maybe go for that. That's not my style. That's not me as a person. So I think also stay true to yourself as well. How would you normally interact with people and try and, don't be overly familiar, clearly, but, try and approach it the way that you would approach speaking to someone in the street almost.
I'd imagine with like Laurie, Andy and Carl, it's a little bit easier, obviously, because you know them quite well. So to kind of get that flow.
I didn't at first.
Yeah. So did it start a little bit rocky in terms of the hosting in that sense?
Not rocky, no, but you do have to understand the people and the different dynamics that are at play. So Andy I've known for a long time from going to the matches, and also first time I worked with Andy was about 2008, I think, something like that. So I did know him pretty well.
Good year to start working together, innit? Especially with United.
Yeah, well, the first thing I did with him was helping him with like a video diary that he did for the Great Manchester Football Show, which was on Channel M. It was like a fan video diary of the European Cup final and the run to the Champions League final from 2008. And obviously that was probably the best United team I think I've ever seen as well around that time. So I obviously knew Andy, and I knew his idiosyncrasies as well. But you can't just go in with that straight away, because he's probably the best connected United journalist there is.
Yeah.
His depth of knowledge about the club is completely unrivaled. So from my perspective, that was the most important thing. And then knowing Andy as I do, you can then play on his sense of humour a bit more as time goes on. Carl I'd worked with a couple of times at the Premier League. He'd been a guest when I'd hosted shows for them. So I knew him a little bit, but nowhere near as well as I know him now, clearly.
Yeah.
And Laurie, I didn't really know that well at all. So, you're wanting to bring personality and banter, for want of a better expression, but you can't just throw that at him straight away, because, like I said, you can't be too overly familiar.
It is a balancing act, isn't it? In that sense, it's
100%, and it's also learning when you get it wrong. What did you do wrong as well?
Yeah.
Did you go too strong? Listen. I always listen back. I religiously listen back or watch back as much as I can, because to me that's the only way you can really know how you're coming across as well. And if you are, like you said, if you are getting involved in the conversation too much, or you're being too overbearing, watching it back, listening to it back, and seeing how it feels is crucial in my head. That to me is the way to improve. It's because. And also asking people, what do you think of that? Was that a bit much? Or, people whose judgment you trust. So
yeah, feedback, innit? Absolutely.
Yeah, because you don't get much. You don't get much. People listening are not going to go into the technicalities of what you did at like minute 4 of the conversation. They'll just say whether they enjoyed it or not. So it is also about like honing yourself by listening back, watching back, and seeing what you did right and wrong and learning from it.
I think you have to know what like you mentioned as well, what your strengths are. Like we do the channel, so I handle a lot of the sort of graphic side, the layouts, the social media type stuff, whereas Nick is very good on camera. He's good at speaking. He's very good at sort of engaging presence and video. And we realized early on, let's just split this up, because you're clearly very good at this. I'm good at this. And we sort of just tag team it. And it works so much better than me trying to do hosting, which I'm not great at. Nick trying to do stuff.
Yeah, but Sam, that's fine.
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't matter.
That's what I'm saying.
It doesn't matter.
That's the great thing. That's the great thing.
Because if we were all the same, it wouldn't work, would it?
Exactly.
You need to have different strengths, and I think that is a key reason why the podcast has done well.
Yes.
And people do listen to it. It's because we're all very different.
Exactly.
We're very different personalities, but for some reason there is something about the blend and the different strengths that we bring that seems to work, and people seem to enjoy. So if we were all exactly the same and had exactly the same skill set, it'd be boring.
Yeah.
So
I agree.
Sorry, I thought you were thinking. Talking about balancing and pivoting, someone just decided to trim the hedge outside, obviously, because whilst we're doing an interview, that's what we want to do.
To look neat and tidy, don't you?
Yeah, so, of course. Yeah.
At least it's not the motorbike, Nick. Normally it's the motorbike that goes past.
That's 7 o'clock show. Yeah,
every single time.
There's always something out there. But yeah, just
fun, Nick, innit? To be fair.
yeah, do it. Whatever you want to throw my way. Anyone who's outside right now, if you want to go for it, go for it. I just wanted to kind of end on. Obviously, you guys you mentioned the podcast there. You've got the live shows coming up. Can you just let our members know and our viewers where they can get tickets? What's the crack with the situation at the moment? And I know you're looking forward to it as well, of course.
Yeah, we're buzzing for it. Yeah. So it's November, the 11th of November, which is a Monday at the Lowry Theatre in Manchester, or Salford, if I'm being more accurate, considering the way we started this conversation with demarking exactly what Manchester is and isn't. So yeah, and you can get tickets on the Lowry's website. I mean, if you listen back to Talk of the Devils, the Athletics United podcast, have a look at our social media, any of the 4 of us, basically. There's a link to buy the tickets. There's still some left. They've been on sale for about a week now, I think, something like that. So there's still a few left for Manchester. We're going to be in Dublin as well on Tuesday, the 12th of November, so the day after All the details about that have not been confirmed yet. The tickets aren't on sale quite yet, but will be very soon. But yeah, we can't wait. I mean, the experience last year was probably one of the highlights of my career, to be honest. I mean, wow. I'd never done that type of work before. I'd never been on a theatre stage of any description in any role whatsoever previously. Not the type of thing that you do very often, is it?
Yeah.
So to walk out in Manchester, my hometown, even if I am a Yonner, in my head anyway.
Everyone's just like, Yonner.
Maybe do a show in Oldham, then you can actually walk out in your hometown then.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you sound like Andy Mitten. But to walk out and to say, hello, Manchester, you're like, what? This is weird. And, mum and dad, my wife, father-in-law, friends, to have people like that watching in the crowd as well was just, I mean, that was great. And then we went to London and it was like exactly the same. And the theatre's absolutely packed with people. And then you go to a different country and it's packed with people again, that's doing crazy. two cities in Ireland as well. It's just like, what? Like, this is... And you speak to people afterwards and they're repeating the jokes that you make and things like that. And it's just like, this is absolutely... And, we appreciate the fact that people listen. We appreciate that when we ask for questions or interactions, we get plenty of people getting in touch. So, we're aware that people listen, but to see it in that form and for people to take the time out to pay the money to come and watch on Monday, Tuesday nights, whatever it is. And some of the guys who were there traveled like hours to be there as well. And it was just like, this is absolutely nuts, but fantastic at the same time. So yeah, I can't wait to do that again. It's just, yeah, like I said, it's probably in recent times, it's probably the best thing I've done. So just something brand new, again, learning like you probably went to the worst one in Manchester, to be honest.
Oh, really?
Because in a way, yeah, just because like we were all learning, really. That was the first one. In some ways, it was special because it's the first one we'd ever done. But at the same time, I told a story one night, and then the next night you were like, well, that bit worked and that bit didn't work, so I'll work on that. And then by the fourth night, it was like absolutely like landed perfectly. Just because you're learning again, like I say, you're always learning. And when it's new skills, when it's different things that you're doing, it's refreshing, isn't it? It's re-energizing. So, we've got a little while to wait, but yeah, we're looking forward to it. And like I say, the details for Dublin, we're not going to Belfast this time. The details for Dublin will be out soon as well.
Yeah, I remember the last one me and Sam were at. We actually you guys went for cocktails after it, in the bar, I think it was behind it. And I was sat there, I think I was speaking to your dad for about 20 minutes. And I remember sat there after conversation, I was like, I sat speaking to Ian Irving's dad for 20 minutes, like proper random. Can't remember what it was about, but yeah, I thought you guys, the way the stage presence really, really good. The way I didn't notice that it was, kind of a first show when it was patchy or whatever. I mean, maybe I was
patchy. Who said it was patchy?
Well, yeah, now I'm being thrown under a bus. But I thought it ran smooth. I thought, yeah, I really, really enjoyed it and looking forward to the next one. So, yeah, hopefully it's even better than the last one.
Well, it will be. It'll be different as well. It needs to be different. We need to tell different stories, don't we? And obviously, United will be in a completely different shape, hopefully in November, than they were last year when we were doing it.
Top of the table on the title run, maybe.
Yeah. Why not? Yeah, 21's coming and all that. Yeah. We'll see. But no matter what, like we said before, there'll be something to talk about because we're never short of that, are we? To be fair,
never.
Absolutely.
But yeah, no, it'll be good to have you there again. And I said it to you before we started, but I really appreciate the support that you boys have given us. You're always there when the pod gets released on social media. You're always giving us feedback, and to have me on as well today, I really appreciate it. So thank you for all the support.
I appreciate you coming on. Like, my girlfriend was never a massive. Oh, bear with.
Yeah, she was 10 o'clock.
Yeah, she was never a massive United fan. She was a United fan by like birthright because all her family are like United fans, but she was never really into it. And I took her to Old Trafford for the first time a couple of years ago, and now she's obsessed. And part of her obsession is talking to Devils now. And now she's she's absolutely fully on board with it all. Thanks to Talk to the Devils has like got a proper hardcore fan now. So she's
so she listens to the podcast now, even though she wasn't really a fan at all previously.
Yeah. She loves the fan. Like I took to Old Trafford
amazing.
and I think that clicked in her head like what United was because she'd never been.
Yeah.
And I think that's clicked and what her head was. So I bought.
Well, I think to people as well, I do think that the experience of actually being there and feeling the emotions that we all feel going as fans does make you realise why everyone is so obsessed with going to the game. Because there are people all over the world who support United clearly, and for some of them it's impossible to get to Old Trafford and watch games. But for people who can, like, that's why you like football. You're talking about the Ahmad moment in, what was it, stoppage time at the end of extra time against Liverpool.
Red card as well.
Final ever FA Cup tie.
Really bad
Liverpool
pass
manager.
from Garnacho as well.
Yeah.
Like, I remember every little bit.
Terrible pass, by the way. Hit it badly, didn't he? And Ahmad just dealt with it. But like that feeling when that ball hit the net, that's why you're a football fan. And if you can experience that, whether you're well into football or you're not, that explains exactly why we are so obsessed with it, and why we spend so much time watching United, talking about United, thinking about United, reading about United, etc., etc., etc. So the fact that she's sort of found it is great. My wife could not be less interested if she
couldn't give a toss.
No. In some ways that's quite nice because when I come home we don't really talk about football. There has to be at least 10% of my day where football doesn't dominate.
Separation.
Yeah.
Got to round it out, Nick.
The Netflix hour at the end of the day.
Yeah. I thought, what a lovely place to leave it. Absolutely enjoyed this. Was looking forward to it, both me and Sam. And we can get guests on like yourself. It's always an absolute pleasure, Ian. So thank you very much for joining us. Please do, guys, anyone who's watching this, check out Talk of the Devils. Check out their individual kind of profiles on social media, like Ian referred to before. They're all on there. And me and Sam will both also be there as well.
Mind. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll put the links to the tickets, link to the podcast, and all the social media stuff in the description. And then you can it's nice and easy for you.
Absolutely. And all the best for the Premier League season, Ian.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me on, Nick and Sam. I've enjoyed it.
Appreciate it, mate.
Absolutely. Take care, guys. See you later.